Hey, good morning. Come on, let me. Hey, good morning. Today we're gonna build up the MySQL Cleanup script. MySQL Cleanup script allow us to delete the data from multiple databases. What I mean, if you manage the multiple MySQL databases, you have one primary development QA database, you have a multiple production databases, and your data growing, you need to have a good cleanup process. Maybe your application, wherever you support, it's already providing that functionality, but if application does not provide, and then this falling in your hand to maintain the size of the database, remove the old data which you don't need it, then we have to develop the cleanup script. And actually I'm in that situation where I manage multiple databases, and I have to maintain the retention of the data. In some condition, we can utilize the partition drop. If that database, if that table is using the partition, then as we adding the new partition, we can just drop the old partition. That it's nice and clean and pretty much very fast operation, because dropping partition is the clean and fast process. If you don't have the partitions, then you have to just select this data set and then delete data. Depending on size of the data, in some situation you may have a large amount of data to delete, and maybe you have to like put them in the chunk of the data, depending on your engine. If the engine support deleting at one like the huge amount of the data, or you have to split this amount of data to small pieces. Okay, we will set up our development environment and build that script. For this setup, I'm gonna use the Oracle Cloud, and Oracle Cloud provide the MySQL Enterprise free version, which is like 50 gigabyte plus MySQL HeatWave, that will build that database. We're gonna connect to that database remotely through the load balancer, where we will open only the specific port to our connection, and then set up our environment where we will have a MySQL login path configured to make connection to our support database, where it will be our management database. And then we're gonna create the test database where we'll have some test data, and we'll be running that, and we'll build the script. To build the script, I'm going to use the Claude Code to build that script. Right? Let's see what we can do. And the target time is approximately 1 hour for this session, and see if during the 1 hour we can actually establish this. But now I'm gonna do okay, let me just go over one more time with the presentation. Okay, that will set up the MySQL database, connect to database using the MySQL login path from our home, and then use the Claude Code to build the script. And the cleanup script, the goal is that we're gonna have a configuration table with a login path to this DB. We're gonna have a schema table column for date column, because usually I think we will be doing this based on the date. we can have a where condition. Okay, in some situation maybe there will be that simple like just the date, but in the other condition, other situation, it may be more complicated. I think having just the where condition, it's nice and clean, because now you can put, we have a schema that delete from the schema that table where, and we're putting that where condition. You are in control of that where condition, that you can put that where condition. Now in where condition we can have a retention word. But let's say I'm gonna remove this delete, but let's say let's scoop the where condition and retention days, right? And here in the where condition we're gonna have retention keyword. This way, when the process will extract that where condition, it will replace retention retention keyword with the retention days, and it will be more visible for you when you see this table. Now what I mean, when we'll be managing that table, okay, you have a where condition which you wrote where condition, and then you have a retention days, and having this as a separate retention day, you can use this as a report, you can use this as a validation, and I think it will be nice and clean to see if somebody asks you, okay, what's my retention on those tables? Okay, I'm gonna go to this table and I'm gonna see my schema table and retentions days. Let's say, okay, 360, 400 days, that you have a clean. You don't need to share the where condition, because you or extracting this from the where condition, right? Because where condition will be built dynamically with that retention days. Okay, now I'm gonna use the dbeaver for connectivity. I'm using the Linux, and this is the nice ADA GUI. And our connectivity to the database, how this looks like. Okay, I'm at home, I have a VPN WinScribe. The WinScribe is giving me some dedicated IP address. This way, in the network of the OCI, I can configure my firewall to allow connection on specific IP to this load balancer, and then load balancer is forwarding the request to MySQL database. Okay, MySQL database will work on the port 3306. Okay, the default database inside in internal network. That database itself is not exposed to public, and I don't opening that port for everyone to access. I'm restricting this only for my connection from my home. Okay, and when in WinScribe, right now you have many connections. The WinScribe you can select for X. Okay, let me just show you the WinScribe. Okay, in the WinScribe, okay, location. They have a lot of locations which you can select. You can just select the best location. It will connect you to the closest connection to you, or you can select any data center which is available. They also providing the private IP address, which you can purchase this IP address, and then you can connect to that IP address, and always you will have that IP address, right? That when you're connecting through WinScribe to that dedicated IP address, that IP address will be your entry point. This way you can have scenario that you have like static IP address when you connecting, when you configure the connection to your remote server. All right, now let's go to our database. Let's go to Oracle and let's build the server, MySQL server. Okay, in MySQL is offering the always free tier, and a part of the always free tier is MySQL database. When you create account in MySQL, the first thing which you want to do is create the compartment. Okay, here you just create a compartment, and you can create and you just make your name, and this is just the logical structure. It is good to create that compartment. Don't dump things directly into the root. Just start organizing this from your day one. All right, now once you have your compartment, like for example here I have a database up to database 2. I have multiple different compartments. Next things which you want to do is create the network. That you're going to networking, virtual cloud network, and you're creating your VNC. Okay, that you're putting your name, the CDAR block. You can use the /16, but if this is the demo, just /24 IP, it's more than enough. And show security attribute. Let's go. Okay, let's say we're gonna put 10, 23. Okay, it is added, and now, okay, we're creating the VNC. Now, inside the VNC, you have to create the private subnet, public subnet. We're creating the subnets. Now, you have a private, you have a public subnet, private subnet. Now, what's the public subnet? Public subnet is available to public, but they have still internal IP addresses, but wherever you can define, or you will define, it can have a public IP address, and then it will be available on the public. In the private subnet is just the private. Private subnet do not have a ability to be available from directly from the public. Means if you have a server in private subnet, that server cannot have the public IP address. If the server in the public subnet, that server can have a public IP address and can be accessible directly. Okay. Then we have a gateways. We have an internet gateway, which is part of the public, and we have a net gateway, which allow everything from private subnet communicate to outside. Routing, there is the default routing defined. That the routing is important if you have multiple VCNs. Like VCN is the it is like the network, that if you have one VCN and you have a second VCN, virtual cloud network, and you need to define the connectivity between those, then you're using the routing. You're using the local peering gateway or DRG, and then defining the router. That's the next level of the networking. Private access, dedicated access. And security. Security is where you're defining your access to this network. You have a two level. You have a security on the network level, where you have ingress and egress rules, and then you have also network security group, which you can take that network security group and associate it with specific device, like for example the load balancer or server, when that network security can have additional rules outside that network security group, outside the subnet rules. Okay, now just the digression is that you have to understand how you're setting this up and what you're putting where, because if your network will start growing up, sometimes the troubleshooting of the connectivity problem can be challenging. Okay, if you start mixing between the subnet security list and network security group, you're adding this here, you're adding this there, you may have a little bit challenge. But right now in our simple process, we're gonna have just two devices which we'll be using, right? We're gonna have a load balancer, which will be our entry point. That load balancer have network security group defined for the connectivity, and then we have a network. The load balancer is in the public network, and then it has a connectivity with internal network or the private subnet where the database will be. Okay, I go over a little bit about the settings and Oracle. I have a more detailed video where I explain maybe in the more details how this is set up. If you have a question about the setting up the VCN, just post the question. I will do the more detailed view. I know this part is important to understand when you're building your own network, and it may be not that simple. Okay, now let's build the database. That for example, in this situation right now, I already have the network, right? I built that network before, and I have my public subnet, I have private subnet, I have load balancer, and now we're going to add the database. That we're gonna go to databases, and we're gonna create database. Okay, we have always three options available. Let's name this DMS. Okay, create administrator credential. Okay, that looks like they changed this. Okay, and before the administrator was the default account where they create. Looks like right now they changed this and they allow to create your own username. That we're putting here the username, but this is the full administrator. Actually, I will maybe say another way. The administrator is the account which they have. The root by default and historical perspective, root is another main account which is available here or in MySQL, but the root in MDS has little bit different permissions than the root in the MySQL Enterprise in the local server. Right, that be mindful of that even if we're gonna name this account as root account, that account actually do not have every permissions. For example, what it's missing? It's missing the let's say stop slave. Actually, in MDS here we cannot stop the slave for the session. No, set SQL bin log off. Actually, stop slave also you cannot do it because you have to do it this from the console. That just be aware that there is some slight restriction. Okay. Setup standalone. Okay, high availability it's available where you have a paid account. Now, what's the difference between standalone and high availability? Standalone is the one single database. If they're doing the maintenance of that database, this database is down for the maintenance purpose, the update purpose. It is not available. The high availability has a 3 database, 1, 2, 3 behind, and you see this as one. Okay, you don't know which one you're connecting. And now if they're doing the maintenance, let's say if one database is your master or your primary database, they're doing maintenance, they're moving the primary to another one, doing maintenance on this database. This way for you there is only like the milliseconds or maybe second or two downtime from perspective of the operation of application availability, right? That you are less impacted, that this is the production grade level. Another slide information is that there is this, they provide the default configuration, and there is the slight mismatch which I was experienced in terms of the standalone and high availability config. That when you will be in the stage where you need to configure your development environment and production environment, and you want to use the high availability as a production, make sure you're gonna use the high availability config set to build the standalone database. Especially there is the issue with the private key. I don't know if they fixed it or they modified this today or not, but some times ago when I was setting up that environment for my development team and production, I was experiencing that problem. Okay, now configure the networking, and we're gonna put this in just for the easy thing. I'm gonna put this right now in the public subnet. My load balancer is in the public subnet, that it will have a direct connection with this. No, let's put this in the private. Actually, how it's supposed to be. Okay, we're gonna put this into the private subnet. Network security group I'm not defining, and the default availability it's 81. 81, 82, 83, what this mean? It means the Oracle has 3 data centers across the Ashburn region, and you can put your system in any of those 3 data centers. For the free account, yeah, it is only 81 available, but if you have a paid account, you can put this in the 3 in any of those 3 data centers. And also each data center has a fault domain. Now, what is the fault domain? The fault domain is the group, this is the segment of the data center which have an independent power networking. That means 1, 2, and 3. Now, let's say if they're doing the maintenance in one segment, that segment does not impacting the other areas. It is also important when you're creating the high availability environment and you're spreading your servers across one AD but multiple fault domain to keeping your application up and running. Add the heatwave cluster. Okay, the heatwave cluster is the in-memory database that you have your base database, which is the standard InnoDB database, but then on top of that you have the in-memory database. Now the tables are loaded to that memory and they're consistently sync with the main database. The heatwave is giving you the faster access, and it is beneficial. It is visible, the difference in the queries. We may not see this here in that low environment, in the sense that we have a very low we have a 50 gigs data here maximum, and that heatwave is only 8 giga. That means maximum we can load up to 8 gigabyte into the heatwave, but you can exercise with the heatwave functionality and rapid engine type. We have a 16 giga memory for, okay, the 16 giga storage, backup, okay, there is no backup enabled, tools, MySQL Studio, okay, I never tried this. It looks like we can enabling this, and we can have like the direct connectivity with that database. Okay, deletion plan, delete protection. Once you install this database, you cannot accidentally delete. You have to change those this configuration for delete plan. Automatic backup retention and final backup before deleting. Okay, configuration. Okay, we're gonna leave this as default. Management, Oracle gonna manage this. Connection, okay, we can define the IP address. I'm gonna leave this right now the blank. Port also we can change. I'm gonna leave this as a default. REST endpoint, I'm gonna call this as a 344. Okay, I'm gonna change this. We can exercise that. Of course, we have to enable this through the load balancer. Maintenance, management. Okay, user can read and write statement. We have option here to just allow administrator that if you're doing some maintenance on the database, you can just disable everybody else except the administrator access. Okay. We're not doing import security attributes. I think we are ready to just click create button. Okay, it's gonna take a couple minutes to have that database ready. Okay, the question here is, okay, now the free version, in the free version you're always gonna get the latest database, and the database will be updated as they updating this version. That right now we're using the 9.5.2 version. You don't have option to go with the older version. If you are paid user, then you can have older versions available, like for example 8.0, 8.4, or then going into the 9, depending what application or is your application supporting which version. That now resources allocation, we have a one eCPU, memory is 8 GB RAM and 50 GB storage. Okay, heatwave is available. Right now it's disabled. It will be created as. Okay, let's see if the IP address. Okay, IP address is not assigned yet. That we have to wait for IP address to assign. And once we have assigned IP address, then we can update the load balancer. Okay, now let me show you the load balancer configuration. Networking load balancer. Okay, that we have a one load balancer which is which has an IP address. This is a public IP address. If you need to create load balancer, you can create using this button and answer a couple questions. There are the two different type of load balancer. There is HTTP load balancer, which is this version, and then there is network load balancer. In the free version, you have access to both load balancers. You can have a network load balancer as well as a HTTP load balancer. Now, in HTTP load balancer, you are limited to 16 hosts that you can, let's say, host up to the 16 URLs, 16 domains, 16 subdomains. In the network load balancer, you can have up to 40 listeners. Now, each listener can listen on the TCP or UDP port and then forward this request to the backend servers. In load balancer, you can also use the TCP forwarding. You cannot use the UDP forwarding. Okay, I'm using right now here for the purpose of the MySQL. I create a listener with the port 13306, and that port is my publicly available port. When I can connect to it, and then that will forward my request to backend server. Now, backend set. Okay, right now this MySQL is out. Okay, this was the old IP address on the server, which I deleted actually just before this training, and now we building up the new one that now we're waiting for. I think it's taking more than I was expecting to take. Okay, so we're waiting for the database to come up. Let's work a little bit on the Claude Code. Okay, okay. That in the Claude Code, we're creating the Claude MD file. The Claude MD file is the memory for this project. That I created a folder, and in that folder will have a very minimal number of the files, because this way it will help me out to send data and be limited only to this project, right? Especially when the Claude Code is sending data to my to the Claude server, it will not have to manage everything else which we may work out in the future. This is related just for the cleanup script. Okay, I'm gonna copy. Okay. Okay, that we're gonna have a main script. Main script will connect to this DB, pull list of each configured cleanup based on group. Okay, let's just group also the groups. Why groups? Because let's say you may have a set of the 2 or 3 or 5 tables, for example, which are related, and you won't run this process, just narrow down those groups. This way we can pass group parameter, and then we're gonna just pick up those 5 tables and work only on those tables, and then we may have another schedule which gonna run with another group on, let's say, another time. This way we can run multiple processes which can overlap. Okay, main script will connect to this process and pull a list of each configured cleanup based on the group configuration. Let's say table support.c support config. Okay, that select list of tables to clean up with defined group value, then create delete statement using schema table name db schema. And where condition. In where condition keyword attention, replace that keyword with retention days value. Okay, where condition where tx date less than date add current date interval minus retention days. Okay, that, for example, this is the sample where condition. Retention days, let's say 300, and final schema, db schema. Okay, let's say debug schema is up and table name TRX. Okay, where condition, retention date. Okay, dot final delete statement. It is the delete from app TRX where core date equal interval minus 300 days. Okay. Now then connect to MySQL using the login path and execute delete statement in limits repeat this multiple times until we delete all records. That means here we need, let's say in some condition we have a slave enabled disabled, slave enabled disabled. Limit delete limit, let's call this as a now why I put here slave enable disabled. You may have a condition where you have a multiple database and you want to, even if they're replicating consistently, there could be situation where you want to delete them separately, right? Whatever reason is that you don't want to run the delete process with the slave on, you want to run this process with the slave off. Okay, of course this is the special case and your responsibility to manage the consistency between the data. Okay, the MySQL, I'm just watching the MySQL process to create. It still is in creating mode, but we have IP address. Okay, but now we have a Claude ND status. Okay, let's go back now to our database. All right, and let's configure it our load balancer. Okay, we have right now IP address 10.10.10.40. Perfect. But now we can go back to the load balancer backend. Like you see here, before I had a 10.10.36. But now I can just edit this backend, and no, actually I have to delete this backend. And then now first let's add new backend IP address 10.10.10.40 and port is 3306. It's gonna take the minute or two to complete that request, and once we added this, then we can delete the other backend. That was the old server which I had here, and I just delete and recreate everything. Okay, that the 40, this is new one, this one it's delete. Okay, perfect. And now we have a database active. That as we have an active database, we can make the connectivity. That now we have a load balancer. Load balancer right now it's making the connectivity. That now let's configure our connection in DB viewer. Okay, that my IP address here is my my load balancer IP address. The port is the port of the load balancer, because that load balancer will send the data. I will connect to load balancer, and load balancer will connect to this database. Okay, the username is root. Okay, test connection, and I have successfully connected. Now, what is important here is that to make that successful connection, it is important that the IP address which you have right now, that for example right now my IP address is 198.44.159.86, that this IP address is whitelisted in load balancer. That this load balancer is configuring to you with network security group, and in this network security group you have a security role, and here I have an ingress from IP address 198.44.159.86, that as long as I am connected to this WinScribe and the WinScribe is giving me this IP address, okay, this IP, then I will be able to make the connection to database. But if I reconnect to WinScribe, even with the same location, WinScribe will provide me the different IP address. It will be never the same IP address, except if I will have a static IP address for the WinScribe. Alright, that we got here. Okay, let's go back to our connection. Okay, we have a database, and now let's just create okay, we're gonna create a database. We're gonna create the user for the Claude, and then we're gonna create the test database and ask to create some sample data which we can test. Okay, create database. This is support. Okay, let's support dev support. Create user. Okay, what is the database? is coming. Okay, this is coming from the network. That now what is my network? Okay, the public network is 10.10.10.027, and this user will be connecting like that, identified by okay. The user is connecting from the load balancer, and load balancer will make the connections. That's why I'm putting here the load balancer IP address. There is not even the load balancer subnet or not 10 percentage. Okay, let's put this like this. 10 percentage. Okay. Okay, create database, create user, and grant permissions. Alright, that now we can make the second connection. Okay, I want this load balancer 13306, and my user is Claude. Claude, okay. Create user. And grant permissions. Okay, edit connection. We're using this user and the password. Okay, we have a message: the public key is not allowed. Now we have to go to the property and allow public key allow, and use as false. Okay. And perfect, we have connection. Right, and we have our test. We have a dev support, and let's create another database, dev app. and we're also gonna grant the permission to dev app. Alright, and now we have about databases available. Okay, that now let's go to our application and let's create. Now the next part is to create the login path, because we connected from the browser, but the application and the script we're gonna use the login path. MySQL as such. Let's see if we can make this happen. I escape the password. Okay, host and minus capital P. Okay, provide the password. Okay, I have a show databases available. Okay, in this one I don't have the MySQL config editor. That now let's try install this and let's see what if we can get it. MySQL. Okay, I'm using the Linux as my client. That I just install MySQL client, and that should have MySQL config editor. Yes, MySQL config editor, it's here. But now if you're using Windows, you can also achieve this, and you have to just install the MySQL client from a MySQL repository. H. That's what I'm doing right now. It's just creating the command MySQL config editor -h p password device. Okay. What is the valid command? Okay, I'm using the ChatGPT. Give me a valid command to create login path for MySQL -h is not found. Okay, yeah. This is actually the proper command. Okay, and now entering the password. And now MySQL search login path equal the Claude. Yeah, and I am connected. All right, so far in this session, what we did, we established the database, we create our environment, and we are prepared for building the script. I'm gonna right now stop this session and return later today or the next week to continue building actually the script. If you have any question related to this process, setting up environment, created the database, post the question below. I go a little bit quickly over the database creation steps. I didn't go very deeply into that process, but we can take this on separate topic if it's needed. All right, thank you very much. Have a fantastic day.